Hello and welcome to a Bergkamp Wonderland and Arsenal podcast. My name is Raj, and tonight we have on our podcast, firstly, Danny, our lovable producer. How are you, mate?
I'm going to go and get myself 6 bananas and entertain myself. You?
I'll probably just ask for a video link for that one because it's going to be an impossibility. But you've had a good week?
I have had a very good week, yes. Had a lovely bath yesterday and didn't drown. That's always thing. Got a new chair off the NHS. Thank you very much to everyone who pays their taxes. That was $2,500 worth. That's just the amount of tax you'd pay in a week, though, isn't it, Raj?
3 days, yeah.
Oh, cheeky. Yes, so I've got a lovely new one. It's white.
Excellent. And we'll move swiftly on to two of my favourite podcasters. Firstly, Simon, how are you?
I'm very good, Raj. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How was your summer?
It was good, very good. I went to Singapore for the Arsenal tour. And I did a few updates. That was really, really good. And I'm back on the pod after waiting probably 8 weeks to get internet in my new house with my girlfriend since moving in. So that's why I've not been on here for a while. Not because you guys have been ignoring me, I've been ignoring you, but I've been waiting for BT to fucking put the internet in, and they have.
Simon, all you had to do is ask me, and I'd have lent you 20 quid for your internet. That instantly.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Well, it's good to have you on, and look forward to some of your thoughts very shortly. And now to my second favourite pirate after Johnny Depp, Kris. How are you?
I'll take that. Definitely take that. I'm all right, Raj. It's good to chat to you again. I'm a little bit under the weather, and I am the stereotypical 85th minute wasting a bit of time substitution for Mr. Hollick this evening. So I will do my best to put in a performance. But
you've got man flu, I hear.
I have, mate. Yeah, we all know that is life-threatening. I've had it for 6 days, so I'm a little bit past it by now. But hey-ho, it is what it is.
I've heard that a recent scientific survey said that man flu is actually worse than Ebola. So, our thoughts are with you, but try and struggle through for the next hour and a half or so. Anyway, Sorry?
Can I ask Chris a question, Raj?
Go on.
You've got flu. You do know it's getting a bit cold, and every time we see a picture of you on Instagram, you're topless. Do you think maybe you should put a jumper on?
Well, I just got out of bed this morning, so I don't think that really counts, does it? That's you racist.
Sorry.
Anyway, let's
move on. As you were, Raj.
Okay, well, last Saturday we got our first win of the season. It wasn't pretty, but we had to start somewhere. And with his thoughts, it's Simon.
Yeah, I think it not being pretty is probably the best description of it, isn't it? But in terms of the game and how it all went, I didn't get to watch it live, but I watched it all back later on. Just found the highlights somewhere. And the West Ham obviously went ahead, didn't they? Arnautovic, who, to be fair, before the game, I think we were all saying he was the one player that we thought would be threatening and dangerous. And Felipe Anderson, who for me on the day was probably the best player on the pitch, found him. Nice finish for him past Cech. Got back in it instantly, though. Bellerin down the right, which I think we saw all game, and I'm sure we'll talk about because it was, criticised by Alan Shearer and a few other pundits about how much the fullbacks were bombing on. But Bellerin got down the right, ball in, Monreal with a nice finish. And then for a while, it was a bit similar to last season where we were struggling to break the team down. West Ham had their chances, to be fair, worked hard, and then with 20 minutes to go, Issa Diop, who someone Kris will probably know very well from French football, a little bit of a moment of madness, a sort of wild clearance, hoofing it in the air. And then Lacazette looked like he'd found Aubameyang, but it was a Diop own goal. And then Welbeck, with a few minutes to spare, wrapped it up in injury time. So it was a performance that Emery will probably not remember, in sort of 4 months' time or so. But it was important to get the win. And afterwards, no matter what we talk about the result, we were all talking about Mesut Ozil, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on because he wasn't in the squad. But as for a performance, I think that wasn't the most important thing on Saturday. It was the result. We needed 3 points and Emery got that.
Thanks, Simon. Kris, let's talk about the lineup and formation. I mean, what were your thoughts on that? Has Emery now got a preferred formation, or is it still we need a few more games before he really works out what his preferred formation is?
I think the formation is probably set to the degree that he's always favoured the 4-2-3-1 / 4-3-3. It's kind of adaptable in play. It's the same system he played in France and in Spain, so I'm not hugely surprised by that. it's always interesting when people say about playing Aubameyang and Lacazette together, and we've got to play two up front. I don't think we're ever going to see that. What we might see is the two of them deployed in that 4-2-3-1 system. So I think that's probably the way we're going to go forward with it. I thought what was interesting on Saturday was the decision to keep faith with certain players. There was a lot of discussion about whether Granit Xhaka would keep his place. Of course, he did. Whether Torreira would come in for him, of course, he didn't. But there was then and still is now quite a clamour for Lacazette to get a start. I do actually think we'll probably see him start on Sunday, which I'm sure we'll come on to later on. And it's actually quite nice to see a manager who is prepared to keep faith with players and give them a chance, but at the same time, if they're not working, as we saw in Iwobi's case on Saturday, isn't afraid to whip them off quick sharp if the need arises.
Thanks. As it's the early part of this podcast in terms of the season and stuff, I'm going to say the same question I said to the other guys last week, to both of you and Simon, actually, because we haven't heard from you for quite a while, and it's been a very long summer. But Kris, just coming back to you. So what are your thoughts at the moment in terms of the team, the manager? What are your expectations between now and next May?
Expectations are top four. I think that's got to be the first priority, or the first sort of signpost, if you will, that we need to be aiming for. Anything above that will be a bonus. I think there is enough in this squad that is capable of that. I think probably fourth is about the limit with this current squad, although we shall see. In terms of the manager, when it was first announced, I was quite surprised, and then I sat there and thought about it and thought, actually, it does make a lot of sense. And in terms of what he's looking to do, there are sides I really like, and there are sides that I'm not going to lie, do worry me. The playing out from the back is something I'm okay with, and I'm happy for us to be doing. My main concern is, do we have the players capable of providing that sort of skill to do it? And obviously, I think Gary Neville, has, amongst others, has commented about how many windows might be needed to get the players needed to do it. But I do like the fact that whether it's his choice or not, he's giving the current squad the opportunity to prove themselves. We shall see. But the biggest thing that I'm very keen on so far, which as much as I respected the previous manager for this, he is ruthless. He doesn't seem to be a manager that is willing to be Neymar'd, if you will, because that was my biggest concern when he was at PSG. He was undermined from day one, and I was concerned that maybe that would happen at Arsenal, but it doesn't appear to be. So let's push on and see where the season takes us.
Okay, thanks, Kris. Simon, your thoughts too. I mean, Kris, I was quite surprised by what Kris said. A lot of people I don't know, and it's all opinions, obviously. Think that top 6 would be the target, and if we got into top 4, that would be a real bonus in this first year for Unai Emery. What are your thoughts on that, Simon?
I think I agree in the sense I think 4th should be the aim. Certainly, I think simply because, in my opinion, you've got to put City and Liverpool as the best 2 teams, and they'll fight for the title. I think out of the next 4 who will be fighting for those 2 spaces, so I'd say you've got Tottenham, us, Chelsea and Man United. I think Tottenham are probably the best of those 4, and I think that 4th place is really up for grabs. So I'd see no reason why that shouldn't be the target, and I suspect that is the target for Emery. But if he were to come 5th or 6th, I still think that would be, for his first season, would be a good effort. I want him to. His aim for me should be to try a good cup run in either the Europa League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup. I just think for him coming in to win one of those 3 tournaments, I know there's something that we normally, fans, players, supporters don't place great emphasis on. But I think for Emery, if he won something like that, in terms of the time it would buy him, the ease at which he would then be accepted, I think it would do him a world of good. So for me, I'd like him to have a good cup run. And in terms of his style and how he settled in, I think we've got to give him at least 6-7 months till we truly see the team playing his way. In Singapore, I know that was pre-season, but you could see signs of what he wanted to do. But my concerns is at the back. I just don't think they've really solved the problem there. I think there was an opportunity to go and spend good money on a centre-back, a proper centre-back. And I just feel with Socrates, I'm happy with the other signings, but for me, Socrates feels a bit like doing it on the cheap. It doesn't, £16 million on a centre back who's not really going to get any better. He's had his best years. I understand they want age, they want experience, but compare that to Liverpool. They go and spend 75, 80 million on Van Dijk. Fair enough, we can't do that, but you can spend 30, 35 million pounds, and that for me will be my concern this season. That is that I don't think he's brought enough in to solve the problems at the back. So I think we'll be great going forward, but I think again our Achilles heel is going to be that defence.
Okay, going back to the pre-season, Chris, did you actually see that Arsenal versus PSG game?
I did in highlights because I wasn't prepared to pay for Premier Sports, whatever that was.
Well, what were your thoughts on that? Because you're a bit of a French expert, I know. So we look pretty impressive. But I mean, how did you see PSG that day as well? I mean, was it flattering to us, or give us your thoughts?
It was a little bit, yeah. I mean, the main thing to take from that game was that we were a lot further on in our pre-season development than PSG were, and PSG played a lot of, albeit talented, a lot of younger players and players that were not even part of their squad last season. Particularly sort of Timothy Weah was playing, Chris Nkunku who's broken through, reserve goal. I think Buffon played the first half, reserve keeper in the second. So it was a bit of a scratch side. I think the thing that I did like was that we didn't take the foot off the pedal when we got into the positions, when we got into the lead, and we dominated the game. I think that whole pre-season thing was good. I think you got to see some of the personalities of the players on tour. Obviously Simon was there. It was good for media relations, and it's good for the supporters to be out there. It's the modern world, but it was nice to see that it wasn't just a promotional tour, and that game in itself showed that we were ready. And of course, it's probably Matteo Guendouzi's finest performance in pre-season, and arguably the game that got him into the side in the opening game. So, yeah, it was all positives. And as for PSG, I mean, we saw the Champions League draw today. They've got bigger fish to fry, and I think, to be honest, they could probably have turned up in Ligue 1 with the same side they played us against, and probably got a victory. So they won't be too worried.
I know Danny's stressing that I've flipped from West Ham to the pre-season, but I've got one more question about pre-season to Simon, and then we'll go back to West Ham. But Simon, you were out there obviously in Singapore. What was it like as a fan to be on tour with the Arsenal? I
mean, amazing, to be fair. I think for Arsenal, I think a lot of times we don't appreciate the size of the club abroad and the width and the breadth of their fan base, because fair play to Arsenal in terms of they were there for, they landed on, I think, the Monday, Tuesday. The first few days they had double training sessions. As soon as they got off the plane, Emery they're out there training. And then every day they were doing something with the fans in Singapore. They had events in and around the city where fans could run around, they'd meet players, get selfies with them. Players went to signing events, photo opportunities, fan parties. So obviously for Arsenal, there was a lot of time where they wanted to work as a squad, and Emery made sure that they did double sessions. But there was an opportunity for all these fans who, let's face it, I mean, other than watching them on TV at an inappropriate time, never get to see their favourite players. And full credit to the club and to Arsenal. They embraced it. They did loads of stuff with the fans and embraced the whole tour and the city. So I think again, it's one of the things what we like about Arsenal, isn't it? In the fact that it's a massive family, and this tour was just a representation of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of managers out there will say that it's a pain in the arse going on tour overseas, but if you are going to be a global brand or one day become that global brand, you have to go out to Singapore, Australia, and especially Asia, where the fan base is so massive. And if you want to, bring in money and to pay for transfers and stuff, you got to do these things. And I think Unai Emery understands it, and I know Arsene Wenger understood that as well. And
it's your attitude when you do it as well. I mean, we look at someone like Mourinho, who for 2.5 weeks in America, had an absolute sour face on him, and you compare that with the Arsenal players and Emery, who, okay, fair enough, they might not have been happy, they might have been jet lagged, they might have been tired, but they didn't show that at all. And their attitude, it's, they embraced it and went with it, and that says a lot about Emery and the club. I
thought they got their PR absolutely spot on this time, and I'm not saying that they've had problems with PR in previous tours and stuff, but this tour particularly, there was a lot of coverage and a lot of, we could access videos and stuff a lot more than usual. Did you think what did you think about the PR? Because I thought the accessibility of the manager and players was even greater. I don't know if this is a Wenger thing or not, but I know certainly from speaking to people at the club and media people at the club,
the media guys have a lot of access now with the players. Certainly in training, I think they can film nearly all the training sessions, and then the fans get to see it on YouTube. Lots of time with the players. Emery's already willing with it. So from that aspect for fans as well, it is great. But I think whether that's a new manager, Emery said, I'm quite relaxed for the club to film the whole training session, do what you want with it. Whether that keeps on going, I don't know. But I know that the media side of the club's PR team, are getting a lot more access, which is good for the fans.
Yeah. Kris, Unai's got a Twitter account. I thought it was dangerous when we found out that he's got a Twitter account. What are your thoughts on that? Should he be on social media? Because I know he probably doesn't run it, and I know someone else runs it for him stuff. But if you're a curious person, you want to look at your own account. If he goes, if we go through a bad period, it's going to be a bit caustic, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean It's always a difficult one, this, because if people, if we're all sat here really thinking that people at the club or people at the club previously didn't look at Twitter, even if they didn't have an account, we'd be mad, because I'm sure they're informed. I guess, like you said, it is. From what I can gather, it is actually run by him, because he was made quite famous for this in PSG, because they did quite a big interview with him I think it was in L'Equipe, where they sort of said, do you check? And he said, oh yeah, it is actually me. I do. I run through these things and talk to people and like to get a feel for the fans and whatnot. So from that perspective, it's good to see. Does he check it? I mean, is it going to be bad? I suppose it can go one of two ways. I mean, in theory, if things go well, it could be very, very good publicity for him. If it doesn't, it could be the reverse. But I think it's just the modern world we live in. From what you do for a living, Raj, it's all, everybody. If you're going to go and have a toilet break, people want to know before your trousers have gone down what you're going to be doing. It's one of those. So it's kind of the modern world. It is the approach to football that we have now, and I think, even if it doesn't actually have Unai Emery as the as the Twitter handle, he'll be fully aware whether the supporters are pro or against what he's doing. And to be honest, I doubt whether it will matter to him a jot what people are saying. And unfortunately, we've already seen, even after 2-3 games, the usual people are out in force calling for his head. So yeah, I don't think it's going to bother him that much, to be honest.
Cheers, Kris. Listeners, I know we've detoured away from West Ham, but that's how I play the game. I've got 2 more questions, actually 1 more question for both of you. And again, it's because you're back on for the first time this season. We are now a franchise, perhaps, and not a football club. No AGMs. The owner owns 100% of the shares, or will own 100% of the shares. Simon, your thoughts on that?
I think it was inevitable for me, simply in the way, you saw Kroenke and how he was running the club, his reluctance to engage with fans, his reluctance to go to AGMs, his desire to take money out of the club for these consultancy fees that he did for 2-3 years, then eventually pressure from the AGM and from supporters stopped doing it. So for me, it was no surprise when it came off, and it was no surprise that Usmanov sold, because he had no power. He had these shares and he had no influence at the club. So why would he have his money in there? Going forward, it's massively disappointing, because, these AGMs and these people who've got shares in the club, who've had shares for families for generations, no longer have that input. And you can argue, they didn't really have a say. They had such a small percentage of shares, but those AGMs were a chance to hold the club to account. And things like those consultancy fees that Kroenke took out every year or so for £3 million got stopped by events like the AGM, and the fact that we could see the accounts being highlighted and people bringing it to the awareness of the wider public and putting pressure on. And now Kroenke, obviously, there's no need for him to publish the accounts. He can take whatever money he wants out of the club, just as the Glazers did, which I suspect he will do for a few years, use the club, and then, as the Glazers did, then put a proportion of it on the New York Stock Exchange, float it, and make your money back. So that is the way of modern football. It's sad, because you don't get many of these AGMs before. Manchester United was another one where you had the AGMs before the Glazers, and for generations of families having shares, it's all finished. It's sad, because it'll be an era that will drift out of football as it is now. But going forward, as a club, I think we're going to have to get used to not having as big an influence as we did in the Arsenal in the years gone by.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Simon. Kris, in my opinion, I think it was inevitable. So I'm this is my 40th year supporting the Arsenal, so it is disappointing, but it's 2019 now, and this is the way that things are going. What are your thoughts on that, Kris?
I'm probably much like you and Simon. I agree it was inevitable. I cop a lot of flack for having this view, but I stand by it. I've always been and will always be a fan of the club on the pitch, and off the pitch. If I'm completely honest, it doesn't really interest me, and it never has. Don't get me wrong, that's not to downplay, as Simon said, the people that have had the club in their generations and, handed down from families and family, that sort of thing. I appreciate that. It would be, in an ideal world, I'd love to have, 1 to 11 of North London lads and, good old Arsenal and all the things that go with it. But it simply isn't the case anymore, not just with us, but with, many clubs. I don't think there's very many clubs in the Premier League alone that have that traditional sort of old school mentality now. Especially not in London. So, yeah, it was inevitable. Of course, I want what's best for the club, but ultimately, a lot of people are speculating without actually knowing what's going to happen. I think we all think it's probably not going to end well. We all think that there's probably not going to be a huge amount of money made available. And we all think that Stan Kroenke will continue to use the club for his own commercial interests. But until that actually happens, I'm just happy to support the club on the pitch and let the people who, I'll be honest, understand more than I do about the financial side look after that themselves.
I'll actually ping it back to you, Kris, straight away. Actually, one of the things you said was about money and whether there's going to be a lack of money. There is an argument that if we continually not qualify for the Champions League, it's going to cost us an absolute arm and leg. So surely there's an argument there that he needs to invest pretty quickly over the next 12 to 18 months to try and get us back into that top 4 slot.
Yeah, it's a really difficult and interesting topic, this, because I, like many people, I know Simon's recently done so. I've watched this documentary on Man City, and whilst I found it a little bit vomit worthy at times, it's very much a Pep love-in, and it's very cleverly edited. It's good, don't get me wrong, but what really came across to me in that was that the investment that club has had has literally transformed the entire area, club, stadium, staff, every single thing, and we're not going to have that at Arsenal under this manager, or this owner, more importantly. And I think almost, I can't actually believe I'm going to say this, but I almost look at what's going on across the road with our nearest and dearest, and I looked at the stick that they got for not signing anyone. And whilst I found it quite funny, I've got to be honest, they were in a position where the squad that they currently have is good enough to be challenging. It won't win anything because it's Spurs, but it's in a position where it's challenging. The problem we have is that we're still rebuilding to the point where we can say we've got a squad that challenges. So as long as enough money is invested to the degree that we can get some players of some quality, I don't mind that we're not blowing the bank open every single summer, because money does not always buy you happiness. And look at Man United. You can spend an absolute fortune. You can pay Alexis Sanchez, £28 million a year. If he doesn't perform, it's a waste of money. So I'm okay with us not spending too much money, as long as we get to the point where we've actually got a squad capable of challenging on all fronts, at least challenging. Then we could just invest with maybe that one big player each time we need them, rather than whole-scale changes every season.
Very good, Kris. Thank you very much for that. And to you, Simon. Apologies again to the listeners. I completely zigzagged away from West Ham. We started talking about something else for the last 20 minutes, Singapore and all other things. But forgive me for that. And I am going to go back to West Ham. And hopefully Danny's 4 bananas into his exercise. So, Danny, last Saturday, 3-1 win. We had 3 former players coming back to play against us. What were your feelings on that?
Glad to see that Fabianski is back in the Premier League. He's a decent goalkeeper, and I do like the bloke, even though he's too short. The last time I saw Jack Wilshere in a West Ham shirt, it was 8. I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. It was so weird. But you were at the game, weren't you, Raj?
I wasn't. No, actually, no.
Oh. Were you there, Simon?
No, I wasn't. I was at Everton v Bournemouth.
Oh, lovely. I just wanted to know how did the reception for Wilshere before the game and after the game? Because the first 20 minutes I heard on the radio, and I heard the woman on the radio scream and go, "Oh, Wilshere's trying to kill someone," or something like that. And Match of the Day didn't show that bit that I saw. But then again, I tend to fall asleep when Match of the Day is on because it's terrible. And I've downloaded the whole game, but I haven't had time to go and listen to it because my mum was busy here all day tickling me. So, seeing Perez come on now, I was watching a bit of the West Ham play midweek against Wimbledon, one of the Wimbledons, and he played in that game as well. And he was terrible for West Ham on Saturday. He wasn't any good for them midweek. And I think all that time I've gone, Perez, he can do a job. I think he may well have shown that he can't do a job. Wilshere is going to be the linchpin for that team, and Fabianski is automatically going to be number one, although Adrian did play in goal for them midweek. It's just really nice to see Arsenal not only get their first points of the season, but the first time under Emery that we're actually in the lead in a game. We had 17 shots at goal compared to the 13 that West Ham had, just looking here, and we had 10 on target. Arnautovic had 5, Mkhitaryan had 3, Aubameyang had 3, Snodgrass and Ramsey both had 2. And it's weird that I felt more confident about the team, the way they were playing, although they're playing against very poor opposition who've lost all their games this season. And like you were saying, Arnautovic is the only player in that team that you would really fear, which is sad when you know that Wilshere's in there. Wilshere was one of my favourites. But like Jace always says, there's no room in football for sentiment. And I think that's kind of proven it, because yet another player who's left Arsenal and has gone down to a lower club and isn't shining there. Give him time. I hope he does well there, just not against us. But I'd love to see West Ham get relegated and see them try and pay off that stadium, the money they've got to pay for it, which is about £10 a week they have to pay, and try and fill it in the Championship, because the fans hate the stadium. I hate the stadium, and it's not even a football stadium, is it? But the game itself, I was really happy with it. Surprised that Iwobi didn't do more against against West Ham, because they're not a brilliant team. And it was good to see that yet again, if you're not doing the job, or that Emery wants to change the way that we're playing, he'll bring people off. So he took Iwobi off at half time and brought on I think it was Lacazette that he brought on at half time. Just checking. Lacazette completely changed the formation. We're playing 2 up front with Lacazette as the main striker and Aubameyang playing a little bit out wide, and then Mkhitaryan, I think he pushed forward a little bit. And then Ramsey was good, but I still don't think that Ramsey is part of Emery's plans, because Ramsey isn't the player that is given the role to go and do whatever you want to try and get the goals and the assists, like he has been very often under Wenger, because he's one of Wenger's favourites. I think that maybe Emery is looking at, he wants the entire team to do well. But the thing that was amazing for me was the amount of play up and down the sides that we got from Monreal and Bellerin, because I know someone did, I think it was That Crab, did a brilliant tweet explaining the percentages that Bellerin has done already this season by getting into the outside of the box, then cutting back and crossing it. And his percentages have gone up season on season, I think. And he's just pointing out how good that was. And Match of the Day were going on about it. And Monreal was another magnificent goal from someone who you got to think sometimes, would it be better to play Bellerin in a more advanced position and play Lichtsteiner behind him? And someone's got a question about that coming up. But I was really happy with it. The whole thing is really good. I don't think Arsenal could do anything at the moment that would make me angry. Everything is a work in progress. And you lot were talking about Gazidis owning, not Gazidis, is it? Kroenke owning 100% of the club. If he wasn't going to, someone else would have ended up doing it. And like Kris, I don't really care, because I'd like to levitate, but I can't. And no matter how much I moan about it, I'm never going to be able to levitate, and I'm never going to be able to stop him owning the club. And you got to think that Man United have got more money than any other team on the planet, and they're chucking money left, right and centre to try and catch Man City, because Man City have got the most amount of money in any team in the entire world, and Man United are second probably. And if Man United are chucking money at it and having disastrous results, then what would be the point in bankrupting our club to try and catch up with those? I say just let the Sheikh go and have his fun with Man City, win the Premier League 10 years in a row, and when he's got bored of it, or when the price of oil is £3 a barrel, then football might get back to normal. But you've seen like Liverpool were just going out and going, we want that player. Well, I don't care how much you pay. 76 million for Virgil and 70 million for a goalkeeper. I mean, we didn't get that all season to spend on players, and other teams are going out and chucking an absolute fortune at it. But I think long term with the owner, it's not going to be a passion thing. It's going to be a money thing. And like Simon was saying, Steve explained to us that how he could go and float it, get half his money or get all of his money back, and still not really care about the club.
Well, that was a big one there from Danny. Thank you very much for that, mate. Simon, staying with the game, I thought Mkhitaryan had a pretty decent game, actually. And last week we were talking about how he blows hot and cold, or in our opinions, he does. He's up and down all the time. Does he need to do more to convince more fans?
Yeah, I think with Mkhitaryan, the issue I have a bit with him, well, not the issue with him, I really wonder with him when we got Mkhitaryan, it was obviously a player that we weren't pursuing before we got him as part of that Sanchez deal. And he basically came out of convenience, wasn't it? It was, you can get rid of Sanchez, a player we don't want, and you can sign Mkhitaryan, who's someone Wenger's looked at in the past, the club have looked at in the past. But we didn't really need him, to be honest, did we? I mean, he wasn't a player, as I say, we were tracking before, and all of a sudden he was part of this Sanchez deal, and we got him in. And for me, when we signed him, I thought it was basically, this was obviously pre-Ozil signing his contract. We've got Mkhitaryan in, there's our Ozil replacement, and Ozil will go too. And now Ozil's obviously stayed. You've got to find a role for Mkhitaryan and Ozil in the team. And to his credit, Mkhitaryan, he's played out wide on the left. He's played through the middle as the 10. For me, he is always going to be best as a 10. And I really do wonder if it rumbles on with Ozil and problems do continue, if Emery thinks, let's give Mkhitaryan, 4 or 5 games as a number 10 and let him have a chance to shine. It's a similar thing to me as when we had Nasri. He was a good player and was good for us out wide, but I always remember that run. I think it might have been 2010, 2011, where we gave Nasri sort of 8 games as the main man, as the number 10, and he flourished. And I do feel with Mkhitaryan, if he was given the opportunity to have a full-on go at being the number 10, I think he'd be great. And we'll see in the next few weeks what happens with him. Other than that, he's going to have to play out wide, which isn't his natural role, and he'll do a job there. But we're never going to see the best of Mkhitaryan unless he's given an opportunity through the middle.
Very fair points there, Simon. Thanks very much for that. Kris, Danny was talking about players, purchases, etc. And West Ham have invested some money this year. They've bought some new players in and stuff. Their club record was broken this year, £22 million for Diop. I didn't see much of him, to be honest, on the highlights. I wasn't there. I didn't see the all 90 minutes, but he didn't look that amazing. Now, you might know more about him.
Well, he scored the other night, actually. He scored for West Ham away at Wimbledon, got the equaliser, which is not what he's been bought for. I think he's a player that will actually come good and do West Ham good in the long run. Strangely, his partner at Toulouse, a lad called Christophe Julien, was a player that I wouldn't have minded us having a little look at. He's a bit younger and a little bit more of a footballing centre half. But yeah, I think he was a bit unfortunate for the own goal on Saturday. Overall, I think he's a sort of player that West Ham needed. And the trouble with that sort of side is, like you said, they brought in a number of players. It's going to take quite a while for them to bed in. He's no different. And I thought it was quite good to see that the fact that we did try when we could to play on him a little bit as it was his debut. So kind of turning him around the other way. But yeah, he's a player that will do well for West Ham. I'm not sure he would have been Arsenal level, so I think they probably paid a little bit over the odds. But Ligue 1 this season has been the league to go to if you want to overspend for players that maybe aren't quite of the level you think. So be interesting to see how he and a few others that have come in from France work out this year.
Thanks, Chris. I'll stay with you. And if you could see me now when I say the next 3 words, Ozil was ill. When I say ill, I've got inverted commas with my fingers up in the air and stuff like that. Most people know that I'm not his biggest fan, but that's my opinion. But Ozil being ill, was he really ill? I mean, what is it about him that? Why do I get wound up about him? I know we're paying 350 grand a week, but
that's probably exactly why.
His absences tend to be rather convenient. Now, please tell me if I'm wrong and tell me that I've got a horrendous attitude and whatever. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm with you. I go back and forth on Mesut so much. On his day, he's undoubtedly the best player at the football club, bar none. And on his day, he can be one of the best, most creative forces in European, if not world football. The problem with Mesut is that those days are a little bit less than they used to be. And I think back to, I think I said in our group the other day, I remember him scoring the goal against Napoli. I remember him single-handedly having a season where he created something like 60% of our goals were from his creation, linking up with Giroud. And, it was a wonderful season he had. I think Mesut suffers with a few things. I think he suffers with a side that, unlike when Arsene was in charge, this side is now not built for him and him alone. This is not an Ozil vanity project. He's part of a system. The system's not built for him. The other concern I think I have with him is that, and this is probably where Simon might be able to touch on this, I think the media have to be a little bit careful how they address certain things. We remember Mkhitaryan's comments last year. I think Tony Adams has come out, rather unintelligently this week and said, he just needs a good kicking. In the old days, in the 90s, the 80s, yeah, probably. The modern footballer, I don't think is the same. And I think Mesut is quite a sensitive chap. I do think that that there may be things in his personal life, as well as the summer's issues that he's gone through, that maybe result in him reacting to things differently to how others might. And we will never know the truth behind that. And people often forget footballers are human beings and they go through things that we don't always know what is going on. So I think you deal with everything in isolation. The one thing I would say is whether there is a problem, whether it be, from his health standpoint, from his personality standpoint, whatever it is, when you're paid that much money and you've built up that much of a reputation in world football, you've got to perform. And if you're not performing, you have to just look your manager in the eye and say, do you know what? Yeah, fine. You walk away, you take your medicine and you get on with it. And I've said the same about Aaron Ramsey and his contract situation. If a player is not 110% committed to the manager and what the manager wants to do, then they go on the bench. It's as simple as that. So I hope we will get the Mesut Ozil we all know is in there. My concern is the longer this goes, are we going to be left with a very hefty asset who's not providing what really he should be in this side?
Thanks, Chris. Danny, staying with Ozil, I don't know. I'm not convinced by him, I have to say. And there's a part of me which says that the European or some of the European transfer windows are closing on Friday, and if he left, I would not lose sleep over it. Your thoughts?
No, I would happily let Ozil go wherever he wants. I don't care if he's on 100 grand a week, whether he's on £1 million a week, whether we get nothing for him or we get 50 million for him. He is, for me, he's not done it last season. He played 35 games out of 59. Now, some of that was injured. Some of it he was dropped because the games were north of the Watford gap. But when you miss 24 games, some of them League Cup, some of them early rounds of the Europa League, but when you miss that many games as the star player, and he scored goals against Everton, Huddersfield, Liverpool, Newcastle and Ostersund, and that was it. And he got assists. You think, well, he got 14 assists, but he got one against Watford, one against Stoke, Spurs, 2 against Swansea, 2 against Huddersfield, 3 against Moscow, 1 against Palace, and 2 against Milan. And you think, well, you're not really doing the job that you've been brought in to do. Yes, you're creating all these chances, and yes, towards the end of the season that you weren't playing much, but you had Lacazette and a fit Lacazette, and you had Aubameyang, who was just taking the league by storm. And then after the January transfer window, when he was absolutely magnificent. But even if you go and look back at the season before that, he played 44 out of 55 games. Season before that, he played 44 out of 53 games. My star player, my most valued player, the one that everyone says is the diamond of our club, when you're not playing as many games as that, maybe you take out, 3 or 4 for maybe the League Cup games. But I want him to play and do well in all of them. But like not last season, but the season before that, it's 12 goals, which you think that's pretty good. 3 were against Ludogorets, 1 against Middlesbrough, who got relegated, 2 against Stoke, who are rubbish, 1 against Swansea, that are rubbish, Watford are rubbish, West Ham 2 against those. Only one team did he score a decent team against, that was Chelsea at home. And again, you look at the number of assists, 14 assists. You think, oh, that's pretty good. 1 against Lincoln, 2 against Ludogorets, 1 against Basel, 2 against Sunderland, 1 against West Brom, and 2 against West Ham. It's just, that's not. But the season before that, it did really well. 8 goals and 20 assists. So my point is, the last 2 seasons, if he is getting goals and assists, they're not against the big teams. They're not doing what we want. Like, if you add it up, the last 2 seasons against top 5 teams, 18 games, 2 goals, 3 assists against the top 5 teams. Now, that is not the kind of record that he has been paid to do. And so I just think, sometimes when you've got a grumpy girlfriend and you know that she's got a load of emotional baggage and you think, oh, I'm going to take her to the bus station and then tell her I've moved. I think it's time to do that with Ozil.
Sorry, just chuckling away to myself there. It is quite eye-opening, isn't it? I'm wondering if Raj doesn't mind if we can get Simon's point of view on this from a journalistic standpoint, because I do think that some of the old-fashioned pros do tend to just jump out and say things without necessarily thinking of it on a human level. They just talk about it from a footballing level. But what do you think of it, Simon? Those stats that Danny's read out, I must admit, I hadn't really thought of it like that before. People have said about the big games, that kind of proves that he doesn't really do it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really difficult one with Ozil, and I think you're spot on, Kris, in terms of just the former pros and players perhaps not always thinking about what they're saying. And for me, it's part of the reason, going on a bit of tangent here, why I feel like Jose Mourinho is struggling at Man United, because this, how to describe it, this sort of stern, get on with it, don't, forget your feelings, carry on playing, shut up. It doesn't work with the modern football. It just doesn't fly. And we saw it with Mourinho, where, he fined Anthony Martial for going to the birth of his child. And you watch this City documentary, as much as it is sanitized, as much as it is, essentially an advert of Manchester City, there's a bit in that where you see Pep with David Silva, who's obviously going through his child being born, 25 weeks, so massively premature. And Pep basically saying, look, if you ever want to leave training, you go home. You don't have to be here. And that is what players need now. They don't need someone who's going to be shouting in their ear and effing and blinding. And there was a great bit on 5 Live the other day where they had the Rotherham coach on, admittedly not the most glamorous coach, but he basically said, you don't understand with these players what's going on personally. And if a player has a bad day at training, is a bad match, he will always, before he, bollocks them, shouts at them, he'll say to them, look, what's going on? Is there anything going on at home with your family? Explain it to me, talk to me about it. And this is what you've got to sometimes understand with Ozil. I mean, he's gone through a situation where he's basically had to, turn his back on his country, the place that he essentially called home. He has had to stop playing for them because he feels he's under racist abuse. He's had teammates come out and misunderstand the quotes. Tony Cruz, he's now had Joachim Low come out today and say there's no racism in the team. And they're not really understanding what Mesut is trying to say. And so I think we need to take a step back from this, whether he was ill or not. Personally, I don't particularly buy it. I mean, he's supposed to be ill, and then Emery revealed he was in the dressing room. And, this is a club, Arsenal, where if you go to the training ground, the players, when you're all around, you don't shake hands, you fist bump, because it's a way of not spreading germs. So the fact that Emery would have Ozil in the dressing room seems a bit interesting if he's supposed to be ill. But I think we've really got to step back and think everything that Ozil's gone through this summer. And it's quite possible, in my mind, how I've seen it, this is completely me guessing, this is my opinion, what I think happened. I can imagine Emery going to Ozil, look, you're not playing this weekend, I'm dropping you. Ozil kicking off out of anger, but not about being dropped, but because it's just, he's everything that's gone on this summer with Germany, with the World Cup. He's reacted to it. It's not changed Emery's mind. He's always going to be dropped, and he's suddenly not in the squad. That's how I feel about it. But I do agree with Kris that we only see the player on the pitch for 90 minutes. We don't see the stuff that goes on at home, the stuff that goes on mentally. And perhaps in the media, you need a wider appreciation of that. And to understand that, they are human at the end of the day. And I think with Emery, with the comments he says, we're making him feel at home, we're as part of a family, that they will work through it with Ozil. And obviously, Emery's protected him in the sense that if there has been a falling out, he hasn't mentioned it. It's all in the press. So I'll expect Ozil to be back in the team this weekend. I'll expect the story to move on. And I can't see him going anywhere because on his day, as we've said, he can easily be our best player. Rant over.
Thanks, Simon. I appreciate that. I think we've had enough of Ozil, but I think we've spoken enough about Ozil for this evening. But there's something that Danny mentioned earlier on. I'm going to go back to Danny. The transfer window for, I believe, Spain, Germany and France closes on Friday. We did mention Ramsey and his contract. He obviously hasn't signed it yet. I think he is running it down. What do we do? Do you think there'll be any interest? Actually, Chris, I'll go to Chris first. Chris, is France a likely destination for someone like Ramsey? Would PSG be interested? Monaco?
No, Monaco couldn't afford him for a start. I mean, since the Rybolovlev situation and his ex-wife Ray-parlored him, if you will. No, I don't think that's a goer. Nobody else in France could afford him, and PSG, I think the only way a club like PSG would go for him is if they had an issue with Verratti or Rabiot moving on. But I think this is the problem that Aaron's got, is that his game is suited to the Premier League, and although he quite liked the idea of playing in Spain and whatnot, I hate to upset people, and I can hear Jason revving his engines outside my house as we speak, but he's not good enough to play for Barcelona or Real Madrid. He's simply not. These are clubs that have had Iniesta and Modric in their midfields. Aaron is a very, very talented footballer, but he's not at that level, in my opinion, and certainly not for the sort of money that's being talked about. So as much as he might like the idea of bailing it, if you will, I don't see that happening. So that really leaves him with a few options. My biggest concern really is that, well, I say biggest concern, they're not in our league right now. He would suit Manchester City. He'd suit a Pep side. I think he'd fit quite nicely into that system. And strangely enough, I wonder if Man City might be keeping their powder dry with the idea that Ramsey could speak to them at the end of the summer. Because if you look at what happened to them in the summer, they're looking for a holding midfielder who can transition the ball from deep and move it through the lines. When Fernandinho moves away, and they were linked with Jorginho. And I wonder if Ramsey could actually become a Jorginho type of player, because he has got that box-to-box engine, as Dom's brought up several times. He has got the ability to play from deep areas as well as pop up with the odd goal. And that would be quite frightening in that Man City midfield. So I wonder if maybe that's his destination longer term. If not, Chelsea or Liverpool both fit the bill, as does Manchester United if they were under different managership. So my biggest concern is that, like you, Raj, I think he is running the contract down. His management company have been playing the Twitter game recently. They clearly have plans for him, and I don't think he'll be a player for us past the end of the season. And that's a shame. The bigger problem now is, what do you do with him? Because he's a big part of our squad right now, and if he's not going to commit, personally, I wouldn't be playing him. As I said in a tweet a few days ago, I would put him on the bench. So it's a very difficult one, that one.
Fair point, Chris. Danny, I'll ask you the same question about Ramsey. We've got 48 hours to go. Will there be a decision made? I don't think that there will be. Also, I read rubbish in newspapers and stuff, and there was a little report about Lacazette being very unhappy and thinking he wants to move on as well. I don't think that will happen, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's a chance that someone might come in very late for Lacazette? He cost us £50 million. It's a tough one.
Lacazette's going nowhere. That's bullshit. And Ramsey, I agree with Chris as usual. He's either going to sign a new contract before soon, or he will be off at the end of the season on a free transfer. As much as I love to see him playing that magical number 10 that he does for Wales. I only said that because Jason is listening. He doesn't play the number 10 for Wales, but Real Madrid might look at the combination between him and Bale and go, we'd like him there, but he isn't at the same level of the players that you've got in Real Madrid. And Ramsey would run riot in that feeder league, because with a team like Real Madrid, and it make him look really, really good. I'm not sure that he'd really want to go there. I think that he wants to stay in the UK. Hopefully he's going to sign a contract, but his management company have a lot to answer for if all the hype and stuff on Twitter is to believe, because they're just making a really hard situation even harder, because of all the people at the club. I think Ramsey is the one player that is struggling to transition between Wenger to Emery more than anyone else, partly because he was Wenger's love child and partly because of the position that he's playing. As we all know, Wenger used to say to Ramsey, "You can do no wrong, son, off you go." The only thing he did that was bad for Ramsey was bringing back from injury too late, but then towards the end of the last season, or all of last season, he stopped doing that. And yes, and the Lacazette thing is just, people are bored. There's nothing to write about, is there? He's not going bloody. First of all, we would never get that money back for him, and who wants him?
Yeah, fair enough.
I love him. I don't want him to go anywhere.
Okay, cheers, Danny. Simon, the other little rumour going around is that we've read, and this seems to be quite reliable, that Yaya Toure is looking for a club in London. What are your thoughts on the possibility that Emery might just go in for him, as he's got so much experience? Is he a tired old player, though?
I'm 99% sure he's not coming to Arsenal. If that's upsets anyone, I'm sorry, but I don't think.
Where do you think he's going to go?
Well, apparently the latest is that his agent was just pulling people along and just had Yaya doing a medical in London, not for a London club, and he's going to go to Olympiacos. But could he have done a job for us? I don't think so, personally. I think someone like West Ham, he would have seen a classic sort of West Ham signing. But for me, I just don't think a player of that age, given the way that Emery wants to play, would have really been fitting in for us. And I know people talked as well about him going to Chelsea. Again, could not see him playing Sarri, and certainly the way Maurizio Sarri wants them playing. So for me, when it was said it was going to be a London club, I thought maybe West Ham or Fulham was a bit of a statement signing to have a glamour name like that. But it sounds more like from the agent that it was a case of just doing a medical in London and that he'll be off to Olympiacos for what will be another large payday and a big birthday cake. But that's it, really, I think. And in terms of Ramsey, I'll quickly give my 2 cents in it, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm a bit like everyone else, where it just feels a bit like the same with Alexis, where, if he's not signed by now, I can't see what's going to change in the next few months. It doesn't feel like it's going to change for me. I personally think he'll end up going in January, because we'll get to that position where it's like we either get some money now or we get nothing. If I was going to stick a 5 or a 10 on where he's going to go, Chelsea would be where I'd put my money.
Okay, Simon, thanks so much for that. Danny, we're going to move on now. Danny, can you give us some news on the Europa League draw? I think it's coming up soon, isn't it? And also, I think we've drawn Brentford in the League Cup or the Carabao Cup at home. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we got at home to Brentford, so that'd be a really good thing for us, because that means we're done with Brentford. They play. Someone was saying they play decent football, but we don't have to put a full strength team against them to get through to the next round. It's also Man United derby, Spurs, Watford, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Oxford, Man City. So yeah, one of those games is going to be interesting and get one of the big ones out of the way. But yeah, I didn't realise that Chelsea were in the Europa League. Why is that?
They didn't get to the Champions League.
Where did they finish in the league last season? I blanked it out.
They were 5th, weren't they, last year?
Bloody hell.
It's Man United, Spurs, Liverpool and Man City in the top 4.
I'd sort of macly assumed that they were, yes. So the teams that are in it, the big ones, remember, we can't get all of these, is Chelsea, AC Milan, Sevilla, Lazio, Marseille, Bayer Leverkusen, Villarreal, Santi, Zenit St. Petersburg, the Arshavin's old team, Sporting Lisbon, and there's a whole load more new ones. Glasgow Rangers have just got through, even though they had 2 players sent off tonight in the away leg. Red Bull Salzburg have been knocked out by a little Croatian team, which is hilarious to see. But I thought Chris has got a better view on what teams are going to be in it and how we're going to do in it. Chris?
You'd think I would, wouldn't you? But I'll be honest, I haven't looked at who's. I'm watching.
Just
Burnley
make it up. No one will know.
I'm sure we'll probably draw FC Tesco or Asda Sainsbury's United or someone. Yeah, I mean we have to be one of the teams that are one of the favourites, quote unquote. The draw, I think, happens tomorrow. I think it's midday. Is it tomorrow? Something like that. It is tomorrow, Friday. That is time of recording. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think the one thing we have got this year is we've got a little bit more experience in terms of the players that are likely to play those games. You'll probably see Leno get some games in that competition. Someone like Danny Welbeck is a perfectly passable forward for that competition as well. Whoever's not in the midfield, it'd be nice to see people like Guendouzi playing in that midfield as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm quietly confident. What you want in the group stage, at least, is you want three. It is four in a group, isn't it? Yeah, you want three pretty shit teams. Let's be honest. That's what you want in an ideal world, because you want to be able to rest your key players. The last thing you want to do is end up in a group with someone from Russia, someone from Croatia, and AC Milan. It's the last thing you want. So, yeah, hopefully we can go deep in the competition. But using the fringe players and this year's competition, yeah, you're right. There are a few what I call big name sides in there, but nothing that I would suggest is too much of a worry for us. Chelsea probably is the biggest competition we've got in that competition right now. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Rangers would be quite fun, just to be something different, wouldn't it? So, we'll see what happens.
Okay, good. We are now going to move on to what I call Fife's Corner, which is where we ask the question and the listeners send us the replies. And I'll flip some of these answers back to you guys as well to get your comments on it. The question this week was, do we go all out in the league to get top four, or do we hedge our bets and aim for Europa League success? KHM Hassan in Bangladesh says, depends on a lot of things, our league form and the forms of other top four contenders, injuries, the quality of the teams that drop down from the UEFA Champions League, stupid rule, he says, whether we can reinforce well in January, etc. Things will become clearer after the January window, I think. Chris, I think we need to have our minds made up well before then, surely.
Yeah, we do. By the way, Five's Forum would be better.
Five's Forum.
Yeah. I think that's what we need to use.
Five's Fellatio. There you go. That's another one.
There's an image.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be all sort of, big club mentality, but we're Arsenal Football Club. We should be aiming to win everything we go into. I don't buy into this, oh, well, let's give up that to play this. I mean, I'm watching Burnley as we speak, and no disrespect, actually all disrespect because it's Burnley. That's a club of a size that needs to think about what's their priority in a season, because they've got a small squad and limited players. We've got a squad that's capable of fighting on, all four fronts. That's the domestic trophies or domestic cups, the league and the Europa League. The key is how, as I said previously, how the manager works with the squad, what injuries we get, because that's also going to be important. We haven't got two of our best players cup tied. People forget that this season. We had Mkhitaryan, Aubameyang, and I think Mkhitaryan missed a couple of games with injury, I think, last year. We've got those available this year. So no, I don't think it's a question of prioritising. I think that question only really becomes relevant if you're a month away from the end of the season and you're in a quarterfinal with, Team X, and you've got a game with, say, Liverpool on the Saturday where you could make the top four. That's the only time that really comes into play. So, no, let's go into every competition, into every game, with the idea of winning the next one, if you will. That's how I see it, anyway.
Mr. Hassan's kind of suggests that things will become clearer after the January window. I think there is an assumption by this guy or Mr. Hassan that we'll be buying players. Simon, what do you reckon?
I wouldn't be overly optimistic, simply because, as history has shown us, it's very difficult to buy players in January, and we've struggled buying players in January. The situation could change, perhaps if someone like Aaron Ramsey goes and the squad is weakened, and we then decide, okay, we've got to pick one of these two. Because I agree with Kris personally. I think up until Christmas, I think you can easily play, a sort of Carabao Cup team in the Europa League, and you'll get out of the group no problem. For me, the decision comes when you get to February, March time, and you look at the league table and you look at the Carabao Cup and you think, sorry, the Europa League, and you think, right, which one of these can we realistically win or get top four? Because in the Europa League, you'll get to the last 16. You've essentially got 7 games. If you win those 7 games, you're guaranteed Champions League. In the league last season, we were in a situation where we could win 7 games and we still wouldn't have got in the Champions League. So for me, you've got to take it where you get all the way up to February, March. You look at the league table, you look at the Europa League, and then you decide which one you're going to go for, because that Thursday, Sunday, players, clubs hate it. And while it is no different to the Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, the Champions League, the thing for the players that they hate is obviously it's your weekend gone. So you basically get back Friday from the European fixture, Saturday you're in training, Sunday you're playing. And as silly as it sounds, they are human players and they hate the fact that your whole weekend's gone. And the same for the fans. You get there on a Sunday, it's very much not a Saturday. People got work the next day. The atmosphere is different. So it is tough. One thing that I think will be interesting, from what I've been told from someone at the club, is that the plan is for these Europa League trips that Arsenal are going to fly back. They're going to stay the night for most of the games, and then they'll fly back Friday. Whereas before, Wenger was insistent on they flew back Thursday night, got back. So he was in Colney at his desk at 9:00 the next day. But by the sounds of it, it's changed, and they're now going to fly back on the Friday. So interesting whether that has a difference in terms of recovery and performances on the Sunday.
No, thanks, Simon. I think they've got it right, actually. Flying back on Friday is a good idea, because once you lose sleep, it's very hard to get back. I mean, I'm in a profession where sleep is massively important, and sleeping at odd hours and stuff like that it's a nightmare, and the recovery does take a long time. And with professional athletes, Chris, it's surely a huge factor, and I think they've got that one spot on this year.
Yeah, I agree with Simon, and I, putting it to a really low level of life. I went on my first holiday in 13 years this year, and I liked it so much. I'm going on another one in a month's time. Well, hey, but even just that, which was only a 3-hour flight, myself and my partner got up at ridiculous o'clock to get out there. But once you're there, and you're settled and your mind's relaxed. And it's the same when you come back. The last thing you really want to do is go to an airport and hang around for like 5-6 hours, or stay in a hotel knowing that you've then got to be up at 4 a.m. to then travel back to I always think it's nicer to be back in your own surroundings, in your own bed, whatever it may be. And okay, yeah, you might have an early start next morning and wake up and feel a bit groggy, but you're in your own surroundings, where all your stuff is, where everything, where you've got to be. I just think I think it makes sense, and it didn't work last year, so why not try something a bit different this year? And from a selfish point of view, I hate playing on the Sundays, because it means I've got to get up in the morning and watch my team run around on a miserable wet Sunday morning, and then come back and try and catch our game in the afternoon. So, although we're having a winter break this year, so maybe I'll see a bit more games. But yeah, it's something just doesn't feel right about not playing on a Saturday, whether that be midday, 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Saturdays is always football day. So it's a shame, but if we end up with a pot at the end of it, I don't think we'll complain.
Cheers, Chris. Moving on to some more answers. Mikko in Finland has got a reply very similar to what Mr. Hassan said. Let's see the draw first. If it's a favourable draw, I'd play the fringe players like last season and then reassess the situation after the group stages. But if United or Spurs melt down and we have solid chance for fourth, I'd focus on the league first, which I think is what we've already mentioned anyway. Danny, you're next. So Nicky Wilson in Norwich. Throw them both and go for the League Cup. Is he saying throw both?
Just ignore him.
That's different, isn't it?
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Is he saying throwing both to the league and?
No, he wants to. He said just go for the League Cup because he's sent in stupid questions. He's like Mike from Gooners in the USA. They always send in dodgy questions because they're wrong uns.
Well, he says, or ask again in January when we know if we are in the knockouts, and 2, we know how many of the big clubs have dropped out of the Champions League. It's bizarre. Do you want to send him back a rant?
I tell you what, he has got one point that's worth mentioning.
Oh, don't say that. You'll never shut him up.
Well, I don't know whether he's come out of this by default, but the last part he mentioned there about the teams falling into the Champions League, into the Europa League, that draw today has thrown together a lot of big clubs in groups together. And what I mean by that is if you look at some of the groups, there's what I would argue 3 heavyweights in a few groups. And I think there's one group, which is, Simon might be able to help me out with this. I think it's Porto, Schalke, someone else and someone else. It's like a really gash group. And then you've got other groups like Spurs, Barcelona, Inter, PSV. So any one of those 4 coming into the Europa League is going to be a name a named club, a club of prestige, and a club that's going to look at Europa League and think, hey, just like Atletico Madrid did last year. Okay, they crapped the bed as far as the Champions League went, but they dropped into the UEFA Cup or Europa League thinking we're a big club, we can win this, and they went and won it. So you've got to look at that Champions League draw that's made today and think there are going to be some fairly heavyweight sides dropping into that competition in January. So we do have to be a little bit careful about momentum, particularly when we come into those latter stages.
I'm just looking at that group now. In Group A, it's going to be Monaco dropping into the Europa League. In Group B, it's going to be Inter Milan, probably.
Potentially, or PSV.
Group C, probably Napoli.
Mm-hmm.
And Group D, probably... actually, I don't know about Group D. They're all much of a muchness. Group E is definitely going to be Ajax. Well, actually, then they bought some players, haven't they? Got Danny Blind, and then maybe the other one you got possibly Leon Hoffenheim, who Reece Nelson is off to, and then look at that, like Juventus, Man United, Valencia. Wow,
I mean, Man United could end up in it, couldn't it? Yeah.
Could that'd be fair. Actually, no, they're finished bottom, and then they'll go and spend another £500 million on shit.
Okay,
sorry, Raj.
Right. No, it's all right. It's all right. I'm going to move on to the next game. I believe is on Sunday away to Cardiff. So I'm not going to hang around too much on this game, but I want an answer from all three of you in terms of what you quickly expect from this game and what your prediction is for this game. So we'll start off with Simon.
What I expect, 3 points, to be honest. Although this was really the sort of game that we would struggle with last season. So I think it'll be a good test for Emery as to how we do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Cardiff are the only team in the Football League and Premier League who haven't scored a goal yet.
Yep.
So you can bet your bottom dollar that they'll score on Sunday. But they're going to be very organised. They're going to be very up for it. Neil Warnock will love nothing more than stifling Arsenal. It'll be physical. So I think it'll be a good test for Emery and Arsenal, how they go there into a hostile away game. Can they deal with it? Has Emery got the tactical nous to get it over Neil Warnock? And I expect he will, because I would have felt last season we'd have gone there. Early kickoff on a Sunday, not really up for it. We've travelled to Cardiff. I'm fully expecting that Emery will have a plan for this game, and that we'll go there and win. And I will be shocked if we don't come out of there with 3 points.
What's your prediction? Did you say?
I'm going to go for 3-1 to Arsenal.
And first scorer?
First scorer, I'm going to go for Aubameyang to break his duck because he's due one.
Okay, Chris.
Pretty much everything Simon said there. I expect this game to be ugly, to be nasty, to be horrid, just everything. I'm one of the few people who actually quite likes Neil Warnock as a person.
Me too.
I think his book was very entertaining. He's a good bloke and he's a proper football man. The one thing that he isn't is a free-flowing lover of football. He's very much an up and atom type, and he'll get his team organised. I don't expect it to be a spectacle. If you gave me 1-0 now, I'd quite happily take it and get out Dodge. I'm quite surprised Mr. Davis isn't going, actually. It's on his doorstep, isn't it? But I can see us coming out by the odd goal. I'll probably go 2-1 because, like we've already mentioned, if Cardiff haven't scored, you can bet your bottom dollar we'll be the first club they score against. So I actually expect us to come from behind and win 2-1. So that's probably what I think will happen.
Did you mention first goal scorer?
I think they'll score first. So probably a big centre. Boy Morrison at centre half up for a corner, something like that. That's probably what I'll go with.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Danny.
I hate Cardiff. They shouldn't be in the British League unless you're going to let in the Scottish and Northern Irish teams. In fact, I'd let the Republic of Ireland teams in as well. You either let them all in or you let none of them out. So get them out of the Premier League.
Wales are part of the British League, though, aren't they?
No, they shouldn't be. It's not like cricket where it's the England and Wales cricket. It's the English FA and the Welsh FA. So the Welsh team should not be in should not have anything to do with English football. Get them all back to the League of Wales. That's what I say. And
Foreign Secretary Danny on the line.
Yeah, I'd like to apologise to all of our Welsh listeners. And
all of them, including Jason.
Looking at the demographics, 92% of our listeners are Welsh. So there goes our podcast.
Well, it's more of a thing to get Rangers and Celtic in the Premier League. That's the angle I'm going for. And maybe a team from Dublin and a team from Belfast. That'd be magnificent.
Are you not saying you wouldn't like to play Airbus United or whatever they're called these days from Wales?
I think they did change their name, didn't they?
It was
Total Network Solutions.
Oh yes,
their name, I think.
TNS, yeah.
What's your prediction, Danny?
I think we're going to actually smash them, probably 5-0. And who's going to score the first? Mkhitaryan. He hasn't done anything. He's been good, but he hasn't scored a goal.
So basically, you've predicted a 5-0 win, and because I'm in charge tonight, I'm going to ask you to name not just the first scorer, but the second scorer. And if you get both right, I will allow you. I'll allow you to give yourself 10 extra points in the prediction league.
Well, the prediction league's been cancelled, but thank you very much.
If there was prediction league, I would give you 10 points. There you go.
Okay, the second goal scorer is going to be Aaron Ramsey.
What was the first goal scorer?
Mkhitaryan,
right, okay. Fair enough. Okay, we are now going to move on to Danny's listeners' questions.
Okie dokie, right. Are they above or below? No, here they are. Right, Yazid says he didn't put where he's from, which is a shame. I did ask him, but he hasn't replied.
Wales, probably.
Yeah, probably. Well, as you've chirped up, you can have this one. He says, if you had a choice of managers, would you have chosen Emery? And will Arteta be the one that got away? I know we said no, but still felt like something unexpected, more exciting than a guy who will try to steady the ship. I would rather rock the boat. And my one that got away, she was called Cindy.
She got away for a reason, Danny, and you're still not allowed to go near her house. I'm not in the camp that thought Arteta was a particularly good idea. I didn't think he came across particularly brilliantly in that documentary, weirdly. I think Simon shared that observation that I had as well. Obviously, it's a documentary, you can't tell, but he didn't really come across like he gave a huge amount of input in that, but hey-ho. If I'm being completely honest, and I will stand by this, if you'd have given me a choice of any manager that in the world who was available in the summer, personally, Emery wouldn't have been my choice. No, I wanted Jardim from Monaco. I stand by that. But I think of what was available, if you look at the candidates now, other than maybe Ancelotti, I think probably Emery was the best option. And he's certainly the most... how should I put this delicately? The most malleable manager in terms of the Gazidis revolution before he fucks off to Milan. So, yeah, not surprised. But as we said throughout the podcast so far, give him time, and I like what he's trying. Change is always good. So, yeah, I think it's all good.
That's a yes then.
Yeah,
and he's a brilliant manager because he's done this before with every team he's been to. He's had a target and he's done it. Yeah, that's why I'm so happy with him. And
I like the English as well. That's a huge. Simon will tell you every press conference he's at now, it gets a little bit better English. How many managers have you seen, who just come in, pick up the paycheck, and I'm not saying they don't care, but make very little effort to speak in the native tongue. I think that's really credit to him for mucking in and getting involved. So good luck to him.
Speaks better English than Jason and Dom, that's for certain.
I'm saying nothing.
Raj, question for you. We've already gone over this, but you didn't give it an answer. So Jonas in Belgium says, do we play our first team in the Europa League, or do you prefer our second string team to avoid injuries and fatigue?
No, I think it'll be a mixture, to be honest. Whoever's not playing or whatever. I mean, Lacazette, I would imagine, would start the team. But as Kris or Simon, I can't remember who, said earlier on, the first set of fixtures should be relatively weak. So I don't think we have to risk putting our first team out for those games. But I would imagine that whatever team we do put out will take us into the knockout stages.
Okay, very good. Right, 2 questions for you, Simon. One again from Jonas. He says, would putting Bellerin at right wing with Steiner in his back as right back be an option? I knew I'd have seen that somewhere. So what's your answer to
that? It could be an option. Personally, I wouldn't do it. Just because I don't think Bellerin's end product is as good as people have it. I think he can be very wasteful with his crosses. And I don't think he would offer you enough on that right-hand slot going forward that would justify playing him further up the pitch, personally. So I wouldn't do it. I think Lichtsteiner might get a game soon. I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps maybe Sunday at the difficult game at Cardiff, give him a crack there at right back, just because he's a bit more solid defensively.
Go on then, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I thought you
did reply.
There was another question as well. Sorry. No, I just wanted to come in really quickly on Bellerin, just very briefly. Excuse me. He worries me. He really worries me. And don't get me wrong.
He worries you again.
Yeah, he worries me all the time. I really like Hector. I couldn't give a toss if he wears a bloody sarong or a fairies outfit.
That's only because he dresses like you do. That's your ideal person to try and follow.
That as well. But no, I like his, I like the style. I like the fact he's come through, various levels. My concern is that I don't think he knows how to defend. And I
thought you were going to say dress.
Well, maybe that as well. I don't think the answer is just to shift him forward in the team, but I do think the answer maybe would be to split the workload between him and Lichtsteiner. I do think Lichtsteiner, should be given a few games. You got Monreal on the other side. I'm a little bit OCD when it comes to my fullbacks. I like them to match. I don't like to have one quick one down one side and one slow one down the other side. I like them to be both the same. And I think Monreal and Lichtsteiner complement each other quite well in terms of their style. They'll both get forward, but they're both good defenders. With Bellerin, I'm not saying I'm some kind of bloody elite coach, because I'm clearly not. Look at our results.
Come on,
but I do know how a player's body shape should be when defending. I do know that you should show a striker the line. I do know when you should follow a man, when you shouldn't. And with Hector, it's almost like he's so worried about the fact he's not getting protected that he neglects the other duties. And that's not his fault. I'm not saying it's all down to him. He should be protected better. But sometimes you've just got to know you're a fullback and you need to defend. That's your first goal. That's your first primary means of the team. And I just worry. I hope that Emery can coach him and it'll come good. Because let's be honest, bless him. But Arsenal didn't exactly give him a lot of coaching, did he, over his years? So hopefully that'll come. But he is a player that worries me. And I agree with Simon. He was good on Saturday with the overlap, but his end product isn't always the best either. So hopefully I'll eat these words in a few months.
But we saw against Man City and Chelsea that they were deliberately drawing him out in towards the central midfield position, opening up that gap and then bombing down that side. So he's so eager to get forward. He needs to, like you were saying, concentrate on his defensive game. And even if you have to say to him, look, I don't want you running down there. If you want to set up a thing, an attack, go down part of the way, give the ball to whoever's there, Mkhitaryan, and let him do the rest of the stuff. Because, like you were saying, Mkhitaryan's crosses are brilliant. And, against Everton last season, what did he get? 3 or 4 assists in a game? And that's just not his job. And every time he does that, the whole defence has to then all shuffle across a little bit like little piggies in a bed. And then they're vulnerable. And we don't need that.
No, I'm not saying stop him. I'm not saying don't attack. But... Just really focus at the moment on make him a proper defender first, and then Silvinho the shit out of him afterwards.
Okay, well, thanks for spending 5 minutes on Simon's question. Simon, second part to your question from Stephen in Poland. I've never heard of this person. He says, is there any member of the panel who can't undo their shoelaces whilst drunk?
Deny.
Dear.
I'm just happy that how flexible I was to be able to get. I can never normally touch my toes, so
for those of you listeners, for those of you that are interested, there is a program coming soon to Bravo. It's called Collings and Me. It's basically where a TV camera crew who used to film Booze Britain, if you remember that show, will be following Simon for a week and enjoying his many antics that only us in the podcast group are at liberty to disclose, which we won't on this occasion.
Maybe
I think it's less Dispatches, Panorama, more Booze Britain. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe, Simon, you should get yourself some flip-flops. And for any millennials out there, they're not called fucking sliders. They're called fucking flip-flops. Right.
I'd quite like to see Simon in a pair of those. The ones that girls have made famous now. The sort of ones with big fluffy sort of like straps.
Only a matter of time, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I quite like to see him in those.
Right, question for you, Raj, from John West in Texas, US of A. He says, given Emery's previous success in the Europa League and... What the fuck was that? He's just been resuscitated.
He's fallen asleep.
I'm here. What have I done?
Either you or Kris just made a snorting noise.
It wasn't me.
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
It says, so John says, given Emery's previous success in Europa League, and in brackets he's put, and likelihood of it being our best way into the Champions League next season, do you think limiting Lacaz's minutes to keep him fresh, or is it simply down to tactics and balance in the team? Now, I know you hate tactical questions, but that was the next in the list.
No, I think it's early days at the moment, so I would imagine it's tactics at the moment, and he can't get him on the pitch at the moment. But with the League Cup coming up and the Europa Cup coming up, he's going to get a lot of football anyway. And if he impresses in those two competitions, there's no reason why he can't get back into the starting lineup for the Premier League.
Jolly good. Right, Matt L. Roberts in Southampton has asked the question. So each of you, I want you to tell a yes or a no, and then a rough prediction of a score. He says, what's your thoughts on the group in the League Cup draw? As you know, we're at home to, and he said Juventus then. Fucking hell, my brain's off on one. It's all this rice I've eaten. It's getting through a whole tube of Pringles. Raj, what's your prediction for the home game against Brentford?
4-0.
And are you happy with it?
What, the draw?
Yeah.
I live in West London. I've got loads of mates to support Brentford, and it's going to be a right laugh that night. They can't wait. They are over the moon that we've got. They come into the Arsenal. It's going to be a great night for them. I think we'll win easy, and I'm dead pleased that we're playing them.
Okay, Kris, are you happy? And what's your prediction?
Yeah, high scoring game. Brentford play some bloody lovely football, has to be said. I watched them against Villa the other night and made quite a hefty sum of money from them, so thanks for that. Yeah, good side, really good to watch. That'll be a nice footballing game. I think we'll win that but I think we might be a bit closer than Raj. I think we might be more of a 3-2 thriller, but it should be good fun.
Okay, fair enough.
Ooh, Simon, you were saying you like the way Brentford's playing. Do you think maybe Leno will get a start in that game?
Yeah, I think Leno's going to get all the cup games by the looks of it, so I imagine he'll start that, and I think we'll beat Brentford. It's actually better playing a team like that who are going to come out and play, but agree with the other two. It will be a great game to watch.
Wasn't it Brentford that Cech made his debut against, or was it Rotherham?
Rotherham.
Was it Rotherham?
Did we beat them 5-2?
Yeah, at Highbury. Yeah.
Was that game?
Yeah.
I think that's the game that I met Dennis Bergkamp and sorted his career out for him, shook his hand, told him he's not a bad player. And I also met Abu Diaby at a game like, no. It was Diaby. And I said, you'll go far. And yeah. Actually, no, it might not have been Diaby. It might have been, who's the one who looked like Vieira? Louis Beaumont, possibly? Yeah. No, Diaby wasn't a Highbury player.
Wamba?
No, Fabrice was brilliant.
Basically, Danny met somebody whose career went off the rails shortly after. That's what you need to know. Right,
we need to get a wiggle on with this. So this is a really good question. Who wants a question about the Adidas deal? Who knows about it?
No.
Simon, it is then.
I'm happy with the Adidas. I love Adidas anyway.
Are you?
So, yeah.
Are you happy with it? I'm really not.
Why?
I just like Adidas as a brand. So
do I.
Quite about that.
I'd have preferred Nike. I mean, I own Nike Core, but have you seen how many of these teams are wearing Adidas templates this year? They're literally just team wear tops with badges on. They're not very bespoke. I worry that somebody came out today, didn't they? I don't know. Is this about the question, Danny, where somebody said that the money we're going to get from it isn't anywhere near what people originally thought because we're not classed as a top tier Adidas client because we wouldn't be in the Champions League, and because of our recent fall, we probably won't get anywhere near the 60 million they were quoting before.
No.
I'll tell you what, Kris, you're right though. We aren't. So
no, we're not.
We have to take what we can get. I like the brand. I've seen some photographs of kits. I don't know whether it's Photoshop bullshit or stuff, but some of them look pretty good actually. I did like them, I have to say. But
the trouble is the ones people edit always look brilliant. The ones they
do look fantastic. But the ones I saw look absolutely fantastic. But no, we're not going to get £60 million. I mean, you're spot on. Or whoever said that. We haven't got Champions League. We may not get Champions League for 2 or 3 years. I've got no idea. And they're not going to gamble on that. So they are basing their valuation on our current situation. And in business terms, that's quite right.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll ask this to Simon. This is from KHM Hassan, which is an anagram of Chris's initials, in Bangladesh again. He says, what's the verdict of the panel on the supposed Adidas deal? Now, I've gone and had a quick look and had a bit of a goggle. Apparently, Barcelona and Nike 104 million a season, Man U and Adidas 75, Chelsea and Nike 60, us and Puma is 30, and this new deal is roughly 300 million up until 2023. That's up to 60 million a season. What's your thoughts on it, Simon?
Well, if it's 60 million a season, happy days.
I think we just found out it's bullshit.
But I mean, that does seem incredibly high. I don't know, someone like Steve, when he's next on, will be better on the realistic of that being amount. It seems a lot for me, but then Arsenal shirt sales probably always stayed relatively high around the world globally. I mean, if you go anywhere around the world, you'll always see Arsenal shirts. You'll always see Barcelona, Manchester United shirts. So perhaps that's what it is. As for it being Adidas, yeah, I really like Adidas kits. I think Puma's, some of the kits have been absolutely fucking awful. Been just not nice looking kits at all. And I was chatting to someone the other day, and I was saying if Adidas do get this deal over the line, they become the new sponsors. I mean, they've got an absolute open goal if they want to make a killing. Just bring out the bruised banana kit. So easy to make a modern uptake in it. Obviously, Adidas did it all those years ago, and they'd make an absolute killing. The team could be playing shit, and people would buy the shirt. So it's an open goal for them if they want it.
Just quickly, Danny, Sports Sponsorship Insider has claimed in the following reports that Adidas would sign a kit deal with Arsenal from next season worth 60 million per year. According to an expert contacted by the magazine, whilst the deal is set to go through, as reported fee will be a tad lower in the region of 45 million per season. Adidas have a strategy built around major cities and a younger urban consumer, so Arsenal fit that profile, but their recent decline would work against their premium price.
Yeah. 45 million would make sense. That's 50% increase on the kit deal, which obviously no one signs a kit deal for less money, and money in football's going up. And in terms of the finances for the club, we need to boost revenue from other sources like kit sponsorship, because as is the Premier League rule, you can only increase your wage bill by a certain amount each year unless you can raise the revenue from elsewhere. And if we haven't got Champions League money, we need sponsorship deals like this to be able to keep paying big wages.
Okie dokie. Right, that's all for questions, because we're coming up to an hour and a half now. So thank you to everyone there, and also Fred, Shane Lynch in Ireland, Mike in India, Femster in London, Schwinn in a private jet somewhere, probably sipping champagne. And finally, Christian Anderson tweeted 2 hours ago and said, do you gentlemen think we should shoot more? What a wonderful way to end the questions, Raj. You're muted.
I am muted and I wasn't listening. What was the question?
No, you know it's gentlemen's
Gatto
nods.
or cheesecake?
Yeah, it was cheesecake. So yes, it is shout outs time. I'm going to start off with Simon.
So my shout out goes to my employers, who, as you guys know, were the reason I could be in Singapore doing stuff for the podcast and experiencing all that. So you can find them on Twitter at Haters TV, HAYTEIS TV. Same on YouTube. And if you're an Arsenal fan or just a football fan in general, you'll get all the press conferences from the Premier League, all of Emery's press conferences, player interviews within sort of minutes of the game finishing. So follow them on social media, follow them on YouTube, and you'll keep me in a job. Okay,
thanks, Kris.
Your quick ones. Connor Kelly, the wrestler, Chris Tunmore. Cam. I can't remember his surname. I think it's Cam Shulton. Yeah, Cam. There's probably others as well. They've all very kindly bought Pirate shirts, and I've posted a couple more today. I've posted out Chris's and Connor's today. Cam's is on the way. He's all the way in US of A, so his is a bit behind. Oh, Chris Lodato, that's another one. And
Purple
also
Lion.
The Purple Lion. And there's a chap in Wales whose name I forget as well. They're all over the place. Arsenal North Wales SC. And the Gooner who left Hell. That's our Norwegian friend who lives in a place called Hell in Norway. He bought some retro Pirate shirts. So thank you to all of those people for your kind support. Hope you enjoy your new shirts. Check out our merchandise at Barbican Pirates if you want to. And my other shout out this week goes to former Arsenal man Jermaine Pennant. It's good to see that the sanctity of marriage is alive and well in celebrity land. Well done, Jermaine, you prick.
What an absolute fucking bellend of a human being. Banter now, innit? It's banter. No, you're a nonce.
Cheating on your wife is always banter. You know that.
Right. Okay. I think we need to be a bit careful with libel here. Thank you very much.
Really is.
Chris
Oh, no,
Jones.
it's in Big Brother. It's in Big Brother. He's
Jones of Birmingham. That's what it is.
Yes, that's him.
Okay. Danny, shout-outs, please.
All the people who join in with our ABW live shows, there's usually 200 to 300 people in there in the chat box as Jason and the lads are doing the show. And all you need to do that is if you've got a Gmail account, use that to log into YouTube, your email and your password, log into YouTube, click on the link that we give out, then you can be in the chat box chatting away. And then I think every other week we're going to be giving away an ABW live T-shirt. And if you're in the UK, the postage is free. If you're not in the UK, then Jason's going to sting you for an absolute fortune because he's like that and he embezzles it. No, that might have been a lie. No, that was the bloke off of Big Brother doing that. So where was I? Come on, brain. Yeah, join in. It's really, really easy to do that. And then you can be in there chatting with everybody. And then points during the show, Jason will say, give us questions, much like we do on the podcast. And then you just type in your question and then a lot of them get read out, which is why those shows are now longer than the actual bloody game.
There you go. And finally, my shout out this week is to Luke Hearn, who is at LEL_DJ_H. He's actually Shepherd's Bush Cricket Club scorer. And last Saturday, when I turned up to umpire my last game, having sacrificed my seat at the Arsenal to go and umpire the last game of the season for myself, he was there in an Arsenal shirt and he left me to it. So he didn't actually score for the club. He went off to watch the Arsenal. And so I thought I'd mention him. He actually walks from Shepherd's Bush to the ground. It takes him 3 hours.
Jesus.
There you go. And he said,
imagine if you had to do that.
And is he sober when he does it?
He's sober as a judge, yeah. He sits with his dad opposite the other side of the stadium. And when he used to live elsewhere near, I think in Essex or somewhere, he used to walk 6 hours to the ground. So
shouldn't that be sober as an umpire?
Sober as an umpire. Anyway, so he kind of stitched me up. I turned up and he was in his Arsenal shirt, just about to leave, and bade me a good farewell with a little giggle and left. So good guy though, good guy. So follow him if you can. I think, is that it, Danny? Are we finished for this week?
That is the end. Oh,
I've got one question for Raj. Raj, what's the highest score you've ever umpired somebody getting at the level of cricket you umpire in? I'm just curious.
I can't remember the exact score, but it's about 170.
Really? Yeah.
I always wondered
if the ton pluses only happened at professional level. That's all. Just curious.
Oh no, there are tons happen all the time. I played in a game where the opposition batsman scored 200. That was a bit, and in 40 overs, that was a bit sad, that one. I think they got 400. They're a touring team. They got 400, and we had to chase that. We just didn't even bother. Just went on the beers and got bowled out for 60 or something like that.
I'm glad Kevin Peterson is still getting a bat. That's good to hear.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching the cricket in the background, and I think we're struggling a little bit. But anyway, listen, thank you very much, Chris and Simon.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Raj.
Hope to see you again very, very soon. And again, a huge nod to Danny. Every time I do these podcasts, I'll always acknowledge his contributions over the week to get this podcast set up. So, Danny, thanks again for all your hard work, and hopefully those 6 bananas will fit in at some point.
I'm welling up. I'm not sure if it's you being nice to me for the first time in 6 years or whether it's the bananas. And thank you very much for hosting. He enjoyed it so much. I said, do you want to host again this week? And he went, oh, go on then. So that's 3 weeks in a row you've been on, Raj.
I know. Well, I'm taking a break now. I'm off on tour. So hopefully...
Nice?
Going to the Philippines and then Australia, so got a few shows out there, 16 shows or something like that. So We'll be back in a while and hopefully be back on sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. This is a Bergkamp Wonderland podcast.
Right, now those two have gone, we can carry on with the show. This is part 2 where we talk about the injuries. We're going to talk about the under-18s, the under-23s, and the Women's League, and maybe a little bit, if we're lucky, Chris might give us a little bit of a Pirates update. So, Chris, we'll start with the under-23s. We went away to West Ham and beat them 3-2. Eddie Nketiah got 2 goals. Julio, unpronounceable, got 1.
Venezuela.
Bless you. And we have now got 4 points. We're mid-table, so that's not too bad, is it? Nice to see Eddie getting a few goals, ready for the Brentford game where he's going to score 5 or 6.
Yeah, well, he's... he needs games, doesn't he? He'll probably play a couple of the Europa games, maybe. But yeah, it's good. It's good seeing as who's the lad who moved on to Juve.
Stefan Mavidi.
Yeah, he's gone now, isn't he? So yeah, we want to keep the best ones we got left, and yeah, hopefully he'll get a few games. But nice to see him still performing at the youth level as well. Utes.
Yeah, the Utes. And talking about the Utes, that's very brilliantly done. Our under 18s thrashed Leicester 7-0. And so we are now top of the league. Played 3, won 3, goal difference of +11. Well, there again, so is the Spuds from up the road, and West Ham in the Olympic Stadium, because it's not a football stadium. They're all on 9 points as well.
We don't talk about them, do we?
No, that John Jules from the Ministry of Sound Party scored a hat-trick, which is brilliant. Kwame Ampadu is still the manager there. And someone called Bakio Sacco got a couple of goals, 50 and 55. And who else is on there? He only had 3 double barrel surnames, which is Daley Campbell, Spencer Adams, and John Jules. And that was it. I'm surprised there isn't more at that level. But then the opposition only had one, Arlott John. But I think he was somebody who fixes those big chimneys. What they call steeplejacks.
Steeplejacks.
I think he was a steeplejack.
I'm a big fan of John Jules, but I can't help but feel that Pete Tong would shore up the back four. So I think maybe we need to look into that.
That is definitely something that needs doing sooner rather than later.
Indeed.
Right, so the injuries, Mesut Ozil, they've actually put down that he has an illness, physio room. I think they've been very political there, and it says availability slight doubt. And there's a little sad face next to it. Carl Jenkinson, with his self-imposed injury, so that he couldn't get kicked out or sent out on loan or sold. Genius, 40 grand a week. Bless his socks.
Clever lad.
Ashley Maitland-Niles,
Conservative.
Thank you very much. He is back at the end of November. And Ellis was on last week, and he was explaining that although it's just broke. Fuck Ellis. It's a broken leg. That it's not an actual snapped leg, it's just one of the tibia or fibia. It's got a crack in it, so he'll be fine. There's got no long-term stuff from that. Kolasinac is back at the middle of October, or the 3rd week of October, which is probably a good thing, because we can't just keep relying on one Real to play down that left side, can we?
No. Not with. Although Lichtsteiner did quite a good job at left back, didn't he? Weirdly, even though he's right-footed. But
I looked on Transfer Market, and he said he is right-footed, but he was playing even when he didn't have to. He was still using his left foot when he was cutting in.
Yeah.
You'd think left back, you'd cut in, and then you'd cut onto your right foot, but he wasn't. He was still doing it on his left.
Thing is, though, he's been schooled at Juventus. You know, they teach you, and John will tell you in Italian football, you're taught to use your head, your arse, your elbows, everything. So he'll probably have been taught with both feet. He's and he's one of those, and he'd probably go in goal if we asked him to. He's one of those committed souls. So yeah, but I'd like to see an out-and-out proper left back, definitely.
Yeah, which he isn't, is he? He's more of a left wing back when he was in Germany.
Kolasinac, yeah.
Any news from the feeder league on Koscielny's speeded up recovery?
Oh, he's ahead of recovery, which is obviously a good sign.
5 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Dom was saying on the radio show we shouldn't expect too much, but I think it's just nice to see him, old Lolo, back around the training ground again and meet some people and whatnot. I'm one of the few that thinks he's still got something to offer us, particularly with the younger players. Yeah, but no, I still think Christmas is a realistic time frame in terms of being back in around the squad, but it'd actually be quite interesting under Emery to see how fast these injured players do come back, because under Arsene, you'd always know the drill, wouldn't you? A player would be out for 3 weeks, which would inevitably mean 3 months, and then he'd leave them sort of 6 weeks till they were actually back. So yeah, I'd be interested to see how quickly this new head of performance and everything, see how that comes into effect, because although they were in place last year, I'm not sure how much Arsene let them do, whereas Emery seems to let them do quite a lot. So,
shock! Yeah. A manager lets a person do the job they're there to do.
I know, right?
Yeah. The Women's League kicks off on Sunday. The opening game is 12:30 kickoff. Liverpool are coming to Arsenal. Any thoughts on the women's thing? Hopefully, I'm going to try and get an interview of a woman who used to work in for Arsenal ladies doing something. I can't remember what she did, but now she's up working for Burnley. But yeah, she said she'll come on and do a pod and just talk about women's football for a bit. So that'd be interesting. Any views on it?
No, that'll be good. I will confess I'm not one of these, people who pretends to watch women's football when they really don't. I very, very rarely watch the women's game. I'm not going to lie, but that doesn't mean I don't have an interest in it to the degree that I think it's great that we've got a women's team. I think even Man United have got a women's team now. So, no, I'm all for it. I think the crowds are going up. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I think they were saying a season ticket for, I think it was for Chelsea, was £45 a season, which is brilliant. That really gives you, as for an adult, I think it's 22 for kids. So, I think it's fantastic. And I was recently actually approached about running a Pirates ladies team down here.
With your reputation.
I know, me, the 13th Duke of Winburn, here in the ladies' dressing room. No, but John Welsh was my assistant. Can you imagine what would happen?
Oh, crabs everywhere. Everyone's itching.
But no, in all seriousness, I think it's great for the ladies' game. It's growing massively. Burnley are gone. That's Olympiacos' goal there. Lovely job. But yeah, I think it's high time that women had the same rights and exposure to the game. Women's Champions League is growing effortlessly by the day. Lyon are a joy to watch in terms of that, and a lot of the French teams I follow on Instagram post a lot of their ladies stuff, which is always good to see. So yeah, good on the Arsenal ladies. I nearly said Arsenal boys then. You know what I mean. And we always had a good ladies side when I was growing up, so it'd be nice to get back to those days again.
Yeah, it's a shame that people who, because it is becoming not trendy, but it's becoming more. I don't watch that many games either. The one I watched a load of was the Women's World Cup when it was in Canada, I think. I watched a load of that. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, but it's just a shame that people didn't take more notice of when Arsenal were. They did. Was it back-to-back invincibles, and they lost one game in 4 seasons in the league.
Yeah. They were unbeatable, weren't they? Everywhere they went, they were fantastic. But
they were.
Yeah. Good luck to them, I say. And if you could get that lady, that would be a good pod. That I think.
Yeah. So it looks like Rosenborg might be through to the next round of the group stages, which will be good because that's where the mighty Lord Nicholas of Bendtner. They won 2-0 tonight.
Well, you say the mighty Lord Nicholas of Bendtner. He was. Did you hear about this recent story about him in Copenhagen?
Oh, what's he done?
Well, he was accused by his manager, John Gregory, David Ginola-esque, for being too fat. So
who's his manager? John Gregory.
No, I'm saying. Do you remember when John Gregory?
Because then Ginola lifted his shirt up, didn't he, and ran over to him? Yeah.
Do you remember that? They were the good old days of football.
Jumpers for goalposts.
Yes, the manager of FC Copenhagen recently came out and said, "So what's his name? Is it? I think it's Solbakken. Do you remember? I'm sure that's him.
Wasn't he the manager of Norway for a while?
Yeah, I'm sure that's who it is. Look it up while I'm talking.
Yeah,
anyway,
he played tonight. He started.
Did he? I think I'm sure he's.
It says the manager is Rini Kulin.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Solbakken. Anyway, whoever it is, he basically said to Bendtner was a little bit fat, a little bit overweight, a bit chunky. So Bendtner's response to this was to promptly go on his Instagram and paste 4 tubs of ice cream, several chocolate bars, and some kind of like Twinkie-esque product with a winky face. So he's still got it, has Lord Bendtner of Banterville. But yeah, it's safe to say that Burnley are going out. So at least that's one less northern team in the league. Oh, have they just scored? Oh, have they scored? Yeah, they scored. See, I just jinxed them.
Yeah, what's the score on aggregate? They didn't lose the first leg 3-1 or something.
4-2, so they're still going out. But
4 minutes to go.
4 minutes to go. I could do with them scoring again because I'd make a bit of money, but don't gamble, kids. It's dangerous. Anyway,
Celtic have won 3-0 or winning 3-0 with 20 minutes to go. That's good. I like to see Celtic get in there. Although I don't like the bleeding old envelope boy. What's his name?
Brendan Rodgers.
One of your names in this envelope.
Okay, Brendan Lips Rodgers. Yes. Yeah. Looks like a puppet.
A big tit he was. Anyway, talking of tits, how are the Pirates getting on?
Mixed season really. People will be happy to know we've actually won a few games this year, which is nice. What we can't do is string together a series of results. We seem to sort of win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Start the season with a rather unfortunate defeat. I thought we were rather crudely. Well, let's be honest, we were cheated by the opposition linesman.
And if anyone has listened to that podcast that we did together,
yes,
then people will hear that that's rife at your level. In fact, I'm just looking here. The Barbican Pirates podcast that we did has had 3,500 views, listens.
That's really good. Yeah, that's I'm really pleased with that because I didn't know whether we would get anywhere near that. So that's really good to hear. But I got some great feedback, and but we started the season. We did get cheated out of. I'm not saying we would have won, but we could have had an equaliser and got cheated out of with an offside flag, and then they went down the other end and scored, and that was the game over. So that was unfortunate. Yeah, we won a couple of games. Last week we did go down to defeat. We lost 5-2 last week. Had an awful first half, and we couldn't quite get it back. This week we've got a cup game against Plymouth United, who are in the league above us. So that'll be a stern test, but enjoyable as ever. And finally got our home kits finished now, so we're wearing
a thing of beauty.
The Roma-esque, yes,
the burgundy.
Yes.
Well, in fact, both your kits are stunning this season.
Yeah, the yellow's a bit of a pain to wash, but the burgundy, the Roma-esque home kit has gone down well. And as I mentioned in the main pod, a few people have ordered their own kits, which I've sent out.
If anybody wants to go and get any.
Basically, it's just direct message me. I've opened my DMs on Twitter, which is always dangerous.
You dirty bastard.
I know. So
Jace has been straight in there in your open DM.
Straight in with his God knows what.
Hey, you, come here.
Come here. But yes, you can just DM me on my personal Twitter account or DM the Pirates at Barbican Pirates account. All I need to know is what size you are, whether you want your name on it, what shirt you want, and where you live. We ship all over the world, so we've got a couple of people who've got one, just ordered one in America. We've got a couple of people over there, and we got a couple of people in Norway, and
how much all over the world to America, so some people can get a rough idea.
Oh, you've asked me now. I don't know. I'm posting cams sometime this week, so I'll know better then. I posted Connors to Ireland today, and that was £6.40 something. That was first class. That's unrecorded, in fairness.
Oh, it's gone missing. That won't turn up.
Well, this is it. When I send them to America, I'm probably going to have to send them recorded because you never know. But the one to Norway just sent first class. That got there fine.
Oh, Scandinavians are wonderful people and very trustworthy. Yeah. But them Irish lot, that'll be gone the moment someone in the post office realises that you've posted it, and he's probably a listener.
Yeah, but no, it's really cool. Like whenever I tell people, I'm like, yeah, we're Sunday League team. We got people buying our shirts. They're like, what? It's really cool. And I can personalise them to a degree for whatever people want. Put their names on them and stuff. So it's kind of fun. And we've got a mutual friend as well, Danny, haven't we? Who's doing some work with ABW with you and I, which we'll
Kris.
Yeah, we'll keep to ourselves until it's released, but that's going to make things look a little bit funky. And there is
a thing of beauty, and then we will have podcast T-shirts as opposed to Radio Live T-shirts. But I was told him 3 days ago in our WhatsApp group. I said, "Don't worry, I shall have a look through them and send you a WhatsApp." And I've still not bloody done it.
You are terrible. Yes. If there's any consolation, Kris is a busy man as well. So. So I'm sure
and he's a Gooner as well, which I didn't know that.
He is. He's down in Bude, just down the road from me. So across the bridge in Cornwall. Yeah. It's been good. And like I say, we're a little bit more social media savvy this year. We're posting a few things on our Twitter account, making a few people chuckle. So it's been good. And
slow-mo training goals are pretty impressive.
They're fun.
Yeah. What's your Instagram? Because that's where if there's any ladies listening, you want to see the new trim, slim Kris. What's your Instagram?
It's the same as my Twitter, I think. You've asked me now. I'm going to have to look. I don't know.
I don't know what it is. I don't even know. I tried to log into my own Twitter today on the PC to show my mum kittens biting each other, and I couldn't.
You're like, what?
I had no idea what it is. It just turns out it's the same as my Twitter one.
It is. It's AFC38, so it's the same as my Twitter. But yeah, you can have a look on there. But yeah, it's been good fun, and we'll keep enjoying our local football and fighting the good fight, etc. and so on. We pimped out our changing rooms as well. That was quite fun. So yeah, it's
been all
pink. Good. No, we kept it's a council council owned, so we've just stuck a few crests up on the wall and laminated them and stuff. So it looks kind of funky, but yeah, good fun.
And if people can't find Kris's Twitter or his team's Twitter, you can just message the podcast, and then Kris has access to those, and you can have a look through those.
Yes.
So you're going to find some way of doing it, and I shall go later and retweet the kits that you've got, because they are both stunning. They look like Scandinavian kits with all the logos on them, and they're my two favourite kits. They're absolutely wonderful. And ABW is on the sleeve, isn't it? Or on the bum.
Yeah, no, we went on the sleeve in the end. So we got the podcast on the home shirt and the podcast live on the away, even with the Twitter handles this year, which looks even funkier. So, and all the training gear, a few people have bought our training tops because they're quite pretty this year, and they've got the ABW logo on the back as well. So yeah, it's all good, and it's your little way of being able to wear the podcast name as well if you want to. So yeah, it's all good.
Lovely. Right then, people, that is the end of part 2, and in fact the end of the podcast. So cheers for joining me for this last 5 minutes that turned out to be probably 15, Chris.
That's all right, no problem.
And we will be back on Sunday. It's going to be Jason and John and Dom and Shredder. Hopefully we'll have a good win for them to talk about, and then that's it. Oh, actually, next Thursday, yeah, because it'll be post the Cardiff game, so there will be a podcast next Thursday. But then the Thursday after that, because it's international break, I am working on a little bit of something special that is a combination of every single member of ABW all in one podcast. So that's going to be interesting. So that will be out in not next week, but a week after that, and maybe something else as well. So you never know. Anyway, good night, people, and that'd be bum.
Europa League tomorrow, 12 o'clock. Whoop.
Oh, hoi, hoi, cheeky monkeys. And here's a little bit of shenanigans from before the podcast started. Yep, that's recording. What percentage are you at, Raji Poo?
92.
Oh, look at you. You had a good week?
We'll discuss that on the pod.
Oh.
Why are we wasting my breath on stuff which is not going to go out tonight?
Basically,
my time is valuable.
Therefore,
anything I say has to be broadcast. Fucking cat staring at me. Cat is so mad.
How many you got? 2?
2. She's just staring at me. She's literally just staring at me.
One of my cats got attacked again last night.
My 2 are asleep. Well, actually, one's looking at me now. Just staring.
One of those has been diagnosed with kidney disease, sadly.
Oh, how old?
Milking is fucking 10 years old.
10?
Yeah.
My Ken got that. My Ken got that at 18. It killed him within a year. But we were 18. I wasn't paying for any medication, though. No point when they're fucking 18. So I've got lots of questions. And the question I sent out to the listeners, do we go all out for the top 4? Or do we hedge our bets on aim for Europa League success? So we've got 4 answers from that, which is enough, because last time we had too many. You back, Simon?
Do you want to put that in the message box well in advance so I can see it before I... So that's that section where we ask a question and they answer it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you got that, just whack it on there.
And you can see in the questions, the listeners' questions they've sent us, I went and did a bit of Googling on the new kit deal. So where Hassan has put what's the panel's thought on the supposed Adidas deal, the rest of it I went and found and added in there, so that's not part of his question.
What's the next game, actually?
Cardiff
away.
This weekend?
Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, Sunday, yeah. Okay.
1:30. Listeners' questions. Do you want me to put the listeners' questions in now?
Put everything in there.
Our question to them. Okay.
And the answers.
Question.
We had a shit away record last season, obviously. Did people see that stat about Emery not winning a single away game during his last season? Severe.
Because he focused on the Europa League.
Fucking shocking.
So he's got 4.
I just finished Premier Passions, Chris.
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Amazing.
Danny,
just
prompt me when we need to change sections and all that kind of shit.
Well, once you've done all the main thing, then you can go right now on to...
There's quite a lot there, I ain't staying here for 3 hours. Chris is dying.
Yeah, I might not make 3 hours.
No, this is a 90-minute pod, if that.
Yeah,
in and out.
So the stuff that I've got there is the main bit. And then once we've done all that first section, just do as much of it or as little as you want. And then you go, right, now it's time for listeners' questions. Then I do that. And then we do, right, this is our question to the listeners. And then Simon or Chris can do that. And so our question we ask...
Say that again?
Which part?
What's Chris going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, the question to the listeners.
Yeah.
I won't be reading that out. I ask the questions, don't I?
Yeah.
So that segment,
I read the answers out last week and then flipped it to the podcast members.
Okay, good. Yeah, do that. I forgot. I don't remember what I was doing yesterday.
This is a new regime, mate.
It is.
Get used to it.
Yeah. So go whenever you want.
3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. Hello and welcome to a Bergkamp Wonderland